Hello YouTube, welcome to another episode of Mike's Expat Kitchen, where we cook German dishes with American ingredients. Today we're going to cook köfte. Wait a minute, you say. Köfte is not German, it's a Turkish dish. It's Turkish meatballs. And I'll tell you, yes, I'm aware of that. And if you know anything about Germany, is that people from Turkey are one of the largest immigrant groups there. So in the 1960s, there were a lot of workers needed. So they came over from Turkey and Greece and a couple of other countries. And they're very well integrated nowadays. And there's entire neighborhoods with people from Turkey. And they celebrate their own dishes and culture. And Turkish meatballs is to be found everywhere, aside from döner and Turkish pizza. So I like Turkish food. I grew up eating a lot of Turkish food. And here in the US, I'm just going to cook it by myself because there's no good Turkish food anywhere. Maybe I should put this in perspective. There is good Turkish restaurants in San Francisco, but there is no fast food option that's authentic and good. But here's an easy recipe to make köfte, the Turkish meatballs, at home. In almost no time, what we need is a pound of ground beef. Usually I get the 80-85% lean, but any type of ground beef should really work. Then we're going to need the juice of 1 lemon and a teaspoon of baking soda. More on that later. Then for spicing up the meatballs with that somewhat exotic or Mediterranean flavor, we're going to need half a teaspoon of thyme, either powdered or finely chopped, as I did here on my chopping board. Then for some extra fiery spiciness, some red hot chili pepper flakes. Then for that filling meatball experience, 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs. You can use those from Trader Joe's or make them yourself from old white bread. For some more of that exotic flavor, 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. I'm using the powdered kind here. Then we're going to need half an onion, 2 or 3 cloves of garlic, depending on how garlicky you want it. For some additional spice, entirely optional, some cayenne pepper, half a teaspoon of salt, and some regular pepper. One essential spice that determines this typical köfte flavor is Aleppo pepper. It's not particularly spicy, probably the same amount of spiciness than paprika, but it has this distinct flavor that makes köfte taste like köfte and not like meatballs. And finally, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of water in order to make sure our meat dough has the right amount of moisture. Now let's start preparing the onion. We can chop it either really finely or, as I did here, run it through a grater for even better results, because köfte are really soft and you don't want any sharp, hard-to-bite onion pieces in the meat dough later, but everything to blend in perfectly. Now alongside the ground meat, let's add the spices. First, the thyme that we chopped really finely, the cumin for the exotic taste, and the signature spice, the Aleppo pepper. You can be generous with that, about a teaspoonful or so, because it's not really spicy. Go easy with the red hot chili pepper flakes though, because those are spicy by design. Then comes the breadcrumbs. I use those Trader Joe breadcrumbs, which I find really superb, almost indistinguishable from real breadcrumbs. Then comes half a teaspoon of salt and some regular black pepper to taste. And for some more intense flavor, garlic. Remember 20 years ago, this movie Green Card with Gerard Depardieu, where he smashes this garlic bulb by hand to prove how French he was? Well, I can do that as well. Also, it's a good way to prove the garlic is really ripe. If it's not, then your hand's gonna really hurt. Chop the garlic really finely. Same story as with the onions. We want it to blend in and not be exposed to an accidentally large piece of garlic that we sink our teeth into. Dump it into the bowl alongside with the other ingredients and then give it a good stir, either by hand or by using a dough hook like I use here. Make sure you mix that meat dough really well. You don't want any lumps of breadcrumbs or garlic or onions in one place. If you have any second thoughts about the amount of salt or Aleppo pepper that you've added previously, now is the time to add some more. Mix it up one more time, and then we're ready to pull some special köfte magic, because we're going to add a mix of lemon juice and baking soda. Believe it or not, this is going to cause a chemical reaction that is going to make our meat dough really soft. So we're going to squeeze 1 lemon and then add the baking soda, about a teaspoonful, to the meat, and then dump the lemon juice on top and Look what's happening. The acid in the lemon juice is reacting rather violently with the baking soda. Let's add some more water and then mix it up to let this explosive softener protrude all over the meat. Yep, that's exactly why köfte has a different texture than regular, let's say, Italian meatballs or German frikadellen. It's definitely softer. Now, in order to work this magic, we need to cover it up and put it into the fridge for about an hour. But if you live in a place like San Francisco, which is basically like a fridge all year around, you can just put it on the balcony. After about an hour, or if you're in a hurry, maybe 30 minutes at the minimum, the meat dough should be ready to be formed into the classic meatball shape. For this, wet your hand with a little water and then start rolling them either into the classic meatball shape, or the original recipe actually calls for something that's a little flatter, but it's gonna taste the same. Once that is all done, you can heat up the pan. I actually prefer a cast iron pan because it maintains the heat very well, and heat that up to medium heat. Not too hot because we don't want to burn the meat, we just want to brown it very slowly. I'm using grapeseed oil here, but any type of cooking oil with a high temperature point is gonna work. Once the pan has reached the desired temperature, you can put the meatballs in there. Make sure to space them correctly so that they, if possible, not touch each other, and also make sure there's always a little bit of oil underneath every single meatball, otherwise it'll char. Let this go for a while and check occasionally if the downside is browned. If so, turn the meatballs around and brown them on the other side. You want to make sure you work carefully here, because otherwise you're going to destroy the structure and you don't want the meatballs to fall apart. Keep turning them around, and not only the upside and the downside, but also brown the sides eventually. You can see that the pan is at a temperature here that browns the meatballs evenly, and you don't need to worry about charring them. Also, if the pan gets too dry, you need to put in some more oil, and also make sure that there's always a thin layer of oil underneath every meatball. Once they've been all browned on all sides, and they probably need a couple of more minutes to cook all the way through, put on a lid and let them cook a little more. Once they've been cooked to perfection, they should look something like this. Not too dry, but also cooked all the way through. Make sure you test with a fork whether that's the case. And we're ready to plate our köfte. What we're gonna serve it with? I typically use rice from a rice cooker, but you can also use salad like tomatoes and cucumbers with olive oil and vinegar. That's a nice, fresh, moist, and healthy side dish for our köfte. Let's get everything on our preheated plates and serve about 3 to 4 of the köfte meatballs on every plate, along with the rice and eventually some of the salad. Doesn't this look nice? Wait, we forgot to add the meat sauce. There's a little bit in the pan still. Let's drip it onto the meatballs to make sure they are nice and moist. All right, our guests are eagerly awaiting digging into this hearty meal, and we want to serve it with either beer, which always works well, or some red wine, because there's a lot of spice and flavor in this dish, so it'll even stand up against a bold Cabernet Sauvignon or a similar wine. Guten Appetit! I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more episodes of Mike's Expat Kitchen, consider subscribing to the channel.